Brooke Taney was the fifth Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, holding that office from 1836 until his death in 1864. He is most remembered for delivering the majority opinion in Dred Scott v.Sandford that ruled, among other things, that African Americans, having been considered inferior at the time the Constitution was drafted, were not part of the original community of citizens, and, whether free or slave, could not be considered citizens of the United States, which created an uproar among abolitionists and the free states of the northern U.S. He is also notable as the first Roman Catholic appointed both to a presidential cabinet as well as to the court. Taney, a Jacksonian Democrat, was made Chief Justice by President Andrew Jackson. Taney was a believer in states' rights but also the Union, a slaveholder who manumitted his slaves. He believed that power and liberty were extremely important, and if power became too concentrated, then it posed a grave threat to individual liberty. He opposed attempts by the national government to regulate or control matters that would restrict the rights of individuals. From Prince Frederick, Maryland, he had practiced law and politics simultaneously and succeeded in both. After abandoning the Federalist Party as a losing cause, he rose to the top of the state's Jacksonian machine, as Attorney General and then Secretary of the Treasury, and as a prominent member of the Kitchen Cabinet. Taney became one of Jackson's closest advisors, assisting Jackson in his populist crusade against the powerful Bank of the United States. In Dred Scott v. Sandford, an African-American slave named Dred Scott had appealed to the Supreme Court in hopes of being granted his freedom based on his having been brought by his masters to live in free territories. The Taney Court ruled that persons of African descent could not be, nor were ever intended to be, citizens under the U.S. Constitution, and thus the plaintiff was without legal standing to file a suit. The framers of the Constitution, Taney famously wrote, believed that blacks had no rights which the white man was bound to respect, and that the Negro might justly and lawfully be reduced to slavery. For his benefit, he was bought and sold and treated as an ordinary article of merchandise and traffic, whenever profit could be made by it. The court also declared the Missouri Compromise unconstitutional, thus permitting slavery in all of the country's territories. Taney died during the final months of the American Civil War on the same day that his home state of Maryland abolished slavery. Early life and career. Brooke Taney was born on March 17, 1777 in Calvert County, Maryland, the son of Monica and Michael Taney. He was the second son, and the third of 7 children born to a slaveholding family of tobacco planters in Calvert County, Maryland. He received a rudimentary education from a series of private tutors. After instructing him for a year, his last tutor, David English, recommended that Taney was ready for college. At the age of 15, he entered Dickinson College in Pennsylvania, graduating with honors in 1795. As a younger son with no prospect of inheriting the family plantation, Taney chose the profession of law. He read law and in 1799 was admitted to the bar. He quickly distinguished himself as one of Maryland's most promising young lawyers. Marriage and family. Taney married Anne Phoebe Charlton Key, sister of Francis Scott Key, on January 7, 1806. They had 7 children together. Career. In 1799, the same year he began practicing as an attorney, Taney was elected to the Maryland state legislature, where he served 1 term as a Federalist. Returning to private practice, he served as a director of the State Bank branch in Frederick, Maryland, from 1810 to 1815. He was elected a state senator in 1816, serving until until 1821, this time as a Democratic Republican, because the Federalist Party had dissolved. He was also a director of the Frederick County Bank from 1818 to 1823, when he returned to private practice. When the 1824 presidential election divided the party between supporters and opponents of Andrew Jackson, Taney became a staunch Jacksonian Democrat. He was elected Attorney General of Maryland in 1827, but resigned in 1831, first to serve as acting United States Secretary of War, and then to accept President Jackson's nomination as Attorney General of the United States. Jackson administration. Among Taney's opinions as Attorney General, two revealed his stand on slavery. One supported South Carolina's law prohibiting free blacks from entering the state, and one argued that blacks could not be citizens. In 1833, as Secretary of the Treasury, Taney ordered an end to the deposit of federal money in the Second Bank of the United States, an act that killed the institution. Jacksonian populists believed the bank was run for the benefit of wealthy coastal elites and acted detrimentally to the interests of poorer Western and Southern farmers. Treasury nomination. Taney was the first nominee to the United States Executive Cabinet to be rejected by the United States Senate when his recess appointment as Secretary of the Treasury failed in a vote of 28 to 18. Rather than return to the position of Attorney General, however, Taney returned to Maryland and resumed private practice. Supreme Court nominations. In January 1835, Jackson, in defiance of the Senate's rejection of Taney as Treasury Secretary, nominated Taney as an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court to replace the retiring Gabriel Duval. The Senate was scheduled to vote on Taney's confirmation on the closing day of the session that month, but the anti-Jackson Whigs who dominated the Senate blocked the vote and introduced a motion to abolish the open seat on the court. The latter was unsuccessful, but the Whigs succeeded in preventing Taney's confirmation to the court. Two factors intervened to help Taney onto the court, however. After the 1834 elections, Jacksonian Democrats controlled the Senate and, during the 1835 recess, Chief Justice John Marshall died. On December 28, 1835, Jackson sent the nomination of Taney as Chief Justice to the Senate, which had convened that month, after a long and bitter battle with considerable opposition from Whig leaders Henry Clay, Daniel Webster, and Jackson's former Vice President John C. Calhoun. Taney was confirmed on March 15, 1836, and received his commission the same day.